Declaration of Independence. By virtue of our natural and historic right, we hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Eretz Israel to be known as the State of Israel. And just like that, it lived. Did you know that no other nation in history has disappeared from the map for millennia, only to be reborn in their ancient homeland, with their ancient language, under their ancient name? It has never happened. Not once. Not with the Babylonians, not with the Hittites, not with the Assyrians. They are history. But Israel is prophecy. Who has ever heard of such things? Who has ever seen things like this? Can a country be born in a day or a nation be brought forth in a moment? Isaiah 66:8. These were the words of the prophet Isaiah, spoken 700 years before Christ, and for generations, scholars treated them as poetic, symbolic, metaphor. But on that May afternoon in 1948, it became fact, real, recorded, telegraphed across the globe, a nation born in a day. But let's step back for a moment. This wasn't just politics. This was the climax of prophecy moving through centuries of suffering. After World War I, the British had taken control of Palestine from the collapsing Ottoman Empire. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration promised to support the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. But promises are easily made and easily broken. Tensions rose between Jewish immigrants and Arab populations. The land simmered with conflict. Then came the Holocaust. 6 million Jews exterminated, entire communities wiped out. Europe became a graveyard, and for a brief, trembling moment, the conscience of the world stirred. The idea of a Jewish homeland was no longer just sentimental. It became urgent. Survival demanded a home. The United Nations voted in 1947 to partition the land, creating both a Jewish and Arab state. The Jewish leaders accepted, the Arab leaders rejected it. War was inevitable, and yet they declared independence. Within minutes, the newborn state was attacked by 5 surrounding Arab nations: Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq. Their armies were trained, armed, and confident. Israel had no air force, no tanks, no international allies, just a ragtag group of Holocaust survivors, kibbutz farmers, and underground fighters with homemade weapons and hearts full of fire. They should have been crushed in days. Instead, they stood. By the end of the war, not only had they survived, they expanded their territory. The flag with the Star of David flew not just over dreams, but over cities: Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, half of it at least. The Jewish people weren't just returning spiritually, they were returning physically. And it wasn't just the war, it was the language. Hebrew, once only a liturgical tongue, reserved for prayer, came back to life. A language no one had spoken in daily life for centuries became the heartbeat of a nation. Street signs, newspapers, military commands, all in Hebrew. It was as if Ezekiel's vision of dry bones wasn't just about people, but culture, language, identity. Prophesy to these bones and say to them, "Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life." Ezekiel 37:4-5. Israel was reborn, but not as a religious revival. It came back as a secular state. Many of its leaders were not devout. Many were atheists or socialists. And yet prophecy marched forward anyway, because God's promises do not hinge on human worthiness. They hinge on His word. That's the tension many still miss. Was this truly prophetic or just political? The answer is both. God uses empires, kings, and votes to accomplish what He already declared. What Isaiah saw, what Ezekiel envisioned, what Moses warned, what Jesus predicted, it all converged in 1948. This wasn't a coincidence. This was divine choreography. And yet not all was fulfilled. The temple was still gone. The Messiah had come, but not yet been received. The glory had not yet returned. The spiritual awakening remained ahead, but the fig tree had blossomed. The bones had come together. The clock had started. Jesus said, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. This generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." Matthew 24:32-34. Israel is that fig tree. Her rebirth wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the end. Have you seen it that way before? That every news headline, every tension in the Middle East, every global summit is not just about geopolitics, but about a much older story moving toward its final chapter. Israel matters, not just because of what happened in 1948, but because of what's coming next. But stop for a moment and consider this. What does it mean that God brought back a nation that everyone forgot? What does it say about you when you feel forgotten, scattered, or lost? If he can resurrect a people, a language, a culture, a land after 2,000 years, do you really think your story is too far gone? He keeps his promises, all of them, even the ones that seem impossible. Israel in 1948 is the proof. It is the only city God ever called his own. Not Rome, not Mecca, not Washington, D.C., only Jerusalem, the city of David, the place where Abraham met Melchizedek, where Isaac was bound on the altar, where Solomon built the temple, where prophets were stoned, where Jesus wept, where he bled, and where he will one day reign. And yet, this sacred city, chosen by God, adored in Scripture, is the most violently contested piece of real estate in human history. Why? Why do the eyes of the world constantly return to Jerusalem? Why is this small, ancient city, only 49 square miles in size, smaller than most metro suburbs, such a center of international obsession, controversy, and bloodshed? Why does peace always seem just out of reach, and why do world powers rise and fall around what happens there? Because it's not just geography, it's not just politics, it's prophecy, and above all, it's war. A spiritual war, cloaked in the garments of diplomacy, religion, and resistance. Jerusalem is not the problem. Jerusalem is the prize. It has always been this way. From the beginning, Jerusalem has held a strange, gravitational pull. Genesis doesn't name it yet, but the shadow of its hill, Moriah, shows up when Abraham climbs it to offer Isaac. Later, David captures the stronghold from the Jebusites and declares it the capital, not just of Israel, but of worship. He brings the ark into the city. His son Solomon builds the temple there, and the presence of God, in fire and cloud, descends and rests upon it. From that moment on, Jerusalem becomes more than a city. It becomes a throne, a sanctuary, a signpost in God's calendar. God said, "I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there." 2 Chronicles 6:6. And so the enemy made it his target. If Satan can own Jerusalem, he can mock the throne of God. If he can divide it, desecrate it, destroy it, he thinks he can disrupt the story. He knows that God's end times blueprint hinges on this city. The return of the king is not scheduled in New York or London. It's aimed straight at the Mount of Olives, and the kingdom he brings is not built in Paris or Tokyo. It descends upon Zion. This is why Jerusalem is always in the crosshairs, because in the spirit realm, it is the front line. It is the future throne room of Christ, and every demon in hell knows it. Jesus called it the city of the great king. Matthew 5:35. The prophets saw it too. Zechariah declared that in the last days, Jerusalem would become a cup of trembling to all surrounding nations. Zechariah 12:2. Isaiah called it a burdensome stone. Ezekiel saw a future temple there. Daniel's timeline revolves around its people and holy place. Every time the nations rage over Jerusalem, they're unknowingly playing a part in a larger script. one written long before any modern border. But how does this spiritual war show up in our world? Through politics, through division, through the constant pressure to divide the land and sever Jerusalem's identity. In 1948, when Israel declared independence, Jerusalem was split. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel regained control of East Jerusalem, including the Old City and the Temple Mount. The world gasped. It was a military victory, but in the spirit, it was more. It was a prophetic milestone, yet even now the Temple Mount remains under Islamic control. The Dome of the Rock stands where the Jewish temple once stood. Jews are not allowed to pray openly on the Mount. Any hint of Jewish sovereignty there sparks international outrage. Why? Because the war isn't over borders, it's over worship. The nations argue about land, but heaven and hell are fighting over glory. That is why no peace deal ever lasts. That is why no roadmap satisfies both sides, because peace in Jerusalem cannot come until the Prince of Peace reigns from her throne. Until then, it is like holding fire in your hands and pretending it's water. Have you ever felt like your life was under siege in the same way? Pressured from all sides, divided, misunderstood. That's how Jerusalem exists. Always sacred, always under scrutiny, always loved by God, always targeted by hell. Jerusalem is the only city Jesus wept over. If you had known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace. Luke 19:42. But they missed him, and so he said, "Your house is left to you desolate." But that's not the end. Jesus also said, "You will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Matthew 23:39. That was not rejection. That was prophecy. There is coming a day soon when this city that has been trampled, divided, mourned, and war-torn will become the joy of the whole earth again. Not because of politics, not because of human effort, but because the King is coming. The Mount of Olives will split, living water will flow from Zion, the nations will stream to it, and the glory that once filled the temple will fill the earth, starting in that small, battered, holy city. Jerusalem is God's clock, and every tremor in that city, every riot, every ceasefire, every summit, every declaration is the ticking of that clock toward the final hour. So the next time you see a headline about Jerusalem, don't just read it, discern it. Don't just analyze the politics, listen for the prophecy. Because the war is not just over land, it is over lordship. Jerusalem is not the end of the story, but it is the stage where the end unfolds. There is a moment coming when the world will shake, not from bombs, but from absence. Millions gone in a breath, empty cribs, silent pulpits, abandoned homes, chaos surging through airwaves, and in the aftermath, a stunned world will struggle to explain what cannot be explained. The church, the bride of Christ, will be gone, the salt and light removed. And in that vacuum, as nations tremble and empires realign, one nation will stand at the center of it all: Israel. When the church is caught up in the rapture, Israel remains. The stage is no longer shared. The focus narrows. The prophetic lens zooms in, not on the global church, but on the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For centuries, Israel has been the backdrop. In the tribulation, they become the main character. It will begin with peace, or what looks like it. Daniel 9:27 describes a covenant with many confirmed by a coming world leader for 1 week, 7 years. He will appear as a friend of Israel, a man of diplomacy, a political genius. Perhaps he will help rebuild the temple. Perhaps he will guarantee Jerusalem's safety. But at the midpoint of those 7 years, the mask drops. The Antichrist breaks the covenant, sets himself up in the temple, and demands to be worshipped. Jesus warned of this moment. When you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Matthew 24:15-16. This isn't metaphor. It's geographical, literal. A warning to Jews living in Israel that the great deception has begun. And yet, even in wrath, God remembers mercy. During this time, Revelation 7 speaks of 144,000 sealed from the 12 tribes of Israel, not symbolic, specific, Jewish. These are not Jehovah's Witnesses or metaphors of purity. They are 12,000 from each tribe, set apart, sealed by God, immune to judgment, and anointed to proclaim the truth in the darkest hour the earth has ever seen. They are not priests, they are not pastors, they are revivalists. As judgments fall, seals, trumpets, bowls, these 144,000 will preach in cities, in villages, in refugee camps, across shattered landscapes and under the shadow of global chaos. They will declare that Jesus is Messiah, not softly, not religiously, with fire. And if that were not enough, Revelation 11 introduces two witnesses, prophetic giants empowered to prophesy from Jerusalem for 1,260 days. They will shut the heavens, call down fire, strike the earth with plagues. They will not be ignored. The world will hate them, cameras will follow them, global leaders will curse them, and yet they will stand, undeniable, untouchable, unstoppable, until the appointed time. Then the beast will kill them. Their bodies will lie in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days, and the nations will celebrate their deaths like a holiday. But then the breath of God will re-enter them, and in full view of a stunned, streaming world, they will rise. And in that rising, something deeper begins. The judgments are devastating. The world reels, but in Israel, a shift begins. Not everyone believes. Many fall under the delusion, but a remnant awakens. The veil begins to lift. The prayers of centuries start to echo with clarity. Zechariah saw it. And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child. Zechariah 12:10. Can you imagine that moment when Jewish eyes, long clouded by tradition and pain, suddenly see him, not as a blasphemer, not as a Roman invention, but as Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, the Son they never knew they had? Paul spoke of it with trembling hope. I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. Romans 11:25-26. This isn't about every ethnic Jew. It's about a national moment, a spiritual awakening, a fulfillment of covenant. They were chosen in Abraham, scattered for rebellion, preserved through exile, reborn in 1948, and in the tribulation, redeemed. But the cost will be great. Zechariah also says that 2/3 will perish, only 1/3 will come through the fire. Zechariah 13:8-9. This is not light. This is not easy. This is purification. Tribulation is not just judgment on the world. It is the crucible through which Israel is brought back to her God. And make no mistake, she will stand alone. The nations will not save her. The alliances will crumble. The UN will not protect her. Even America will turn away. Revelation 16 and Zechariah 14 describe the final moment. All nations gathered against Jerusalem. The armies surround, the gates break, it looks like the end. And then it happens that the skies tear open, the eastern horizon glows with fire, a white horse descends, and the one they pierced returns, not as a teacher, but as a king, with eyes like flame and a robe dipped in blood. He rides to Zion, And on that day, his feet touch the Mount of Olives, and it splits. The Antichrist falls. The armies shatter. The city is rescued. And Israel, broken, bloodied, but believing, cries out in joy, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The national revival is complete. The promise made to Abraham, the longing of Moses, the tears of Jeremiah, the visions of Ezekiel, the hope of Paul, all of it fulfilled. But here is the question. Are you ready for that hour? Because if you are in Christ, you won't be here for the wrath. But what if your heart is still tied to this world? What if you're living as if you have time? What if, as Israel awakens in pain, you are lulled to sleep in comfort? God is not done with Israel, and if he keeps his promises to her, even after centuries of rebellion, he will keep his promises to you. But judgment is real. The hour is late, and the time to wake up is now. It begins where it all began. On a mountain outside the city that has wept more than any other. The skies have cleared. The bloodshed has ceased. The armies of the nations lie broken in the valley of decision. The Antichrist is gone, cast into the lake of fire. Satan is bound, chained in the abyss for 1,000 years. The war is over, and there, on the Mount of Olives, stands the one who was pierced. The scars in his hands still visible, his eyes like flames, his robe stained with the blood of justice, his name, faithful and true, the King has returned, and now he reigns, not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, takes his rightful place on the throne of David in Jerusalem. The very city that rejected him, that crowned him with thorns, now crowns him with glory. Zion, once battered and divided, becomes the joy of the whole earth. This is the millennial kingdom, 1,000 years of peace, justice, and unshakable rule. The prophets foresaw it with trembling joy. Isaiah cried out, "The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Isaiah 2:3. Micah echoed it. Ezekiel saw the temple rebuilt, not by human ambition, but by divine command. A river flowing from its steps, healing the nations. Jerusalem becomes the capital of the world, not just politically, spiritually. The nations come to her. Gentile kings bow in humility. Pilgrims flood her gates. There is no more war. Weapons are beaten into farming tools. Lions lie with lambs. Children play near vipers. Creation itself exhales. For 1,000 years, the curse is lifted, not abolished, restrained. Peace rules, not because man has improved, but because the King is here. And Israel shines. At long last, the nation is restored, not just to land, but to purpose. They become what they were always meant to be, a light to the nations. The 12 tribes are honored, the covenant is visible, the law is taught, not as a burden, but as a joy. The feasts return, now filled with fullness. No more shadow. The Messiah sits among them. He teaches from the temple. He judges with righteousness. He rules with grace. And oh, the awe of it. Can you imagine walking the streets of Jerusalem and knowing he is there, not just in spirit, but in presence? The King of glory, once born in a manger, once crucified outside these gates, now seated in power. The same Jesus, resurrected, reigning. The whole earth revolves not around currency or oil or politics, but him. And for the first time since Eden, the world is at rest. But it's not just about peace, it's about promise. The God who spoke to Abraham under the stars, who told Moses from the burning bush, who called David a man after his heart, who scattered his people in wrath but preserved them in love. He keeps his word, every prophecy, every covenant, every scarred hope, fulfilled. This is the restoration the apostles longed for. In Acts 1, they asked Jesus, "Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?" Acts 1:6. He did not say no. He said, "It is not for you to know the times." because the time would come, and now it has. The earth becomes what it was meant to be. No more corruption, no more injustice, no more elections, no more terror. The Prince of Peace reigns, and his law is not imposed, it is desired. Because righteousness flows like a river. Truth covers the earth like waters the sea. And yet this kingdom, even in its beauty, is not the final chapter. For after the 1,000 years, Satan will be loosed once more. For a moment. Why? To prove the hearts of men, to show that peace imposed without transformation cannot last. Many will rebel again, and in one swift final act, fire will fall. The rebellion crushed, the devil thrown forever into the lake of fire, and then the end becomes the beginning. A new heaven, a new earth, the old passes away. No more death, no more sorrow, no more curse. And descending from the skies, radiant like a bride adorned for her groom, comes the new Jerusalem, not the city of David, the city of God. And in that city there is no temple, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. Revelation 21:22. This is forever, not 1,000 years, not an era, not a dispensation, eternity. But it began with a promise, to one man under a starry sky, to one people in the wilderness, to one city, small and trembling. And though thousands of years passed, though kingdoms rose and fell, though Israel wandered and suffered and was scattered, God kept his promise. And that's the final truth, the anchor of every prophecy, the hope behind every war, the reason we can endure the silence, the waiting, the tribulation, the tension. God keeps his promises to Israel, to the church, to you. So when the world mocks prophecy, when headlines stir fear, when nations rage, remember Zion, remember the King, remember that his throne is not shaken by elections or empires. He is coming. He will reign. The story is not over. The best is yet to come. Let every heart prepare him room. And let Israel say, the Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy.